The Hawthorn Arts Centre, formerly the City of Hawthorn Town Hall, has played an important role in the lives of Hawthorn residents for more than 130 years. In this video we have conversations with 7 people who tell us about their special connection to this building. Feng Zhejing came to Australia as a student from Hong Kong in 1960. Earlier in the 1950s his family had left Canton, China, in fear of their fate under the new communist regime. His father had been a professor of architecture, but his qualification was not recognised in Hong Kong. The family found that their classification as stateless persons would have a significant impact on their lives.
1950, I think we arrived, and study high school until I was 20, which I came here at 60 and study architecture in RMIT, and eventually I was hoping to go back and join my father. Unfortunately, he passed away before I finished my course, and in 1970 I met my wife Connie, and we got married shortly after, and I granted citizenship in 71, which where Hawthorn Town Hall was the place I went to get my citizenship paper. It was in a big hall. Those days, not a lot of people naturalized every year, so not like today's perhaps. And, so I went up, introduction, and then get a certificate, which I still have it, and everyone receive a tree, which I planted in, I forget where it was, but I think we planted, and that was a very solemn ceremony. And I think because I was a stateless person, so now it's great that I've become a citizen of a country, which means a lot to me. It was a important stage of my life, and so set out a new life, so to speak.
Connie Fung. As a teenager in the early 1960s, Connie came from her home in Oakleigh to attend the Saturday night ballroom dances held at the Hawthorn Town Hall. This weekly dance had started many years before, at the end of World War II, but had remained very popular, and so for many years Wednesday night was also added to the dance calendar. The dance at the Town Hall held the record for the longest continuous dance event in Melbourne, but in 2013, after nearly 70 years, it was forced to move as the Town Hall underwent major renovations.
Or my real association with the Town Hall is back in the early 60s, where there were no clubs and there certainly wasn't any internet dating. So consequently, dances are where you would go to meet others, especially of the opposite sex. That was the aim. So Saturday nights would be getting ready to go off to the dance. You'd spend time grooming yourself in the hope that you'd meet somebody nice that you could dance with. They were very naive, innocent days. The girls would arrive and you would stand around the town hall floor hoping somebody nice would come and approach you and ask you for a dance. Sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. The band dance was really your opportunity to get onto the dance floor. Girls liked it because at least you got up to have a dance, and boys liked it because they wouldn't be rejected. They were fun days. The bands were always good.
Guitar?
They were full little bands, like trombone, saxophone, trumpet, brass bands, usually of about, I'd say, 12 to 15 people in the band. Well, it was fun because you were there with a group of girlfriends and there was never anywhere else to go afterwards either, so you went home. There was very few coffee shops. There was no cafes or bars to go to. It was a very simple way of dating, really.
Peter Haby has a passionate involvement with the Hawthorn Football Club, which for many years had its home ground at the Glenferrie Oval. Now as archivist of the Hawks Museum, he's well aware of the many long-standing connections between the footy club, the town hall, the council staff and Hawthorn residents. Welcome, thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks very much.
You're going to tell us about the Hawthorn Football Club's involvement with the town hall.
We've actually got quite a long one. The club was formed in 1902 at a general meeting in the town hall, and that gives us 118 years association with the town hall, with the exception of recent years when the Hawthorn Town Hall was renovated, where we had our annual meetings at the MCG. All our annual meetings have been at the town hall.
Every year?
Every year. So, and there are members of the club who have been going to annual meetings since the 50s, and they count each year, and their love of the town hall and their associations with living in Hawthorn is extraordinary to hear. Mm. Jack McLeod, who played for Hawthorn in the 40s, likened in style a play to Lee Matthews, who did his knee, and back in those days if you did your knee that was the end of footy. Mm. He worked for the town hall, or his officers. He was a debt collector, rate collector, assistant town clerk and all that stuff for virtually his whole working life. And there was a core of other chaps that worked there as well, and also the groundsmen that worked on the oval at Glenferrie. Their horses and graders and sprinklers and all that stuff were housed at the back of the town hall. When Hawthorn changed its name from the Mayblooms to the Hawks at one of the annual meetings, there's a delightful photo of Jack McLeod. We think it's actually a white pigeon holding up what is supposed to be a hawk for the audience to see. And Jack's still with us today, and he reminiscences about that real well.
Mm. And you've also had quite a few social events there too, at the town hall.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but that's a dance card. The Hawthorn Football Club football committee ran dances at the town hall on Saturday nights, and we got this little dance card when we were researching the hard way back in the mid-80s, and it's quite interesting for people like myself. One of our prominent footballers who was recently inducted into our Hall of Fame, Bob Sellers, he would have been an 18-year-old, has been booked up by the lady that owned this card for dance number 7, and often wondered, the dance ran from music from 12 till 2. Now I don't know if that was an afternoon dance or an evening dance.
Tell me about this, please.
The Kiora Sports Parade was a radio show on a Friday night, something like 3dB, and it was a pretty bawdy sort of a production, and all the VFL clubs and all the association clubs and leading country clubs were part of this weekly program. Norman Banks was generally the MC, and one of the highlights of the night would be the footballers would dress up in drag and do the can-can like the French Follies, and end up by, waving their dresses, kicking their legs, and they'd turn around and, or for want of a better word, a brown eye the audience.
I think you told me that there are 4 occasions where after a premiership the captain of the Hawthorn Football Club became mayor for the day.
Yes, the first time was when Hawthorn beat Collingwood. The whole community of Hawthorn was ecstatic that at last they'd beaten the dreaded enemy at Collingwood at Victoria Park, and they put on a special function in the town hall where John Peck, who'd kicked the winning goal, was made mayor for a day. And here he is here, that's the newspaper article that mentions all the names, and John's in the centre. This chap on the side here, he worked with Jack McLeod. He also played for Hawthorn, and that was the current mayor at the time. And that was followed by, in 61, Graham Arthur was mayor for a day, and 61 mayor for the day to celebrate the 61 premiership. David Parkin did the same in 91, and we do know that Michael Tuck was possibly mayor 4 times, because we've got a photo of him in 91. He won 4 premierships as captain, so he probably has the world record for being acting mayor of the day.
He's been mayor more than any other councillor.
Yeah.
Sam Coffer was sponsored by his uncle and migrated to Australia at the age of 15. He was quick to make his mark in Hawthorn by joining local community groups such as the Hawthorn City Band. However, it was his passion for sport, and in particular for weightlifting, that saw him progress from the Hawthorn Boys Club annual display at the Town Hall in 1954 to become Australian bantamweight champion, and then represent Australia at both the Commonwealth and Olympic Games. He became naturalised and married a local girl, Marjorie. He ran a surgical bootmaking business in Glenferrie Road and took on active roles within the local community organisations. He was elected to Hawthorn Council and served 2 terms as mayor in 1979 and 1986.
The town hall was special because, first and foremost, I come from a very small village in southern Italy, where we don't have huge, big edifices like the town hall. So when you arrive as a child, you know, pretty well a youngster, and seeing this great big building was something that you couldn't take your eyes off. You know, I took photographs and that sort of thing. I used to dabble in amateur photography, you know, and it was great. So that was impressive to me. But as I got involved with the boys' club, chess, the Hawthorn City Band, and things like this, my own sport, and I started to get known, I just realised that the community was doing so much for me. And somehow I wanted to give something back, and I just said one day I'm just going to be one of the city fathers, you know.
When you got into that position of influence that you had hoped for when you were younger, how was it different? Was the town hall what you expected?
Yes, indeed. Yes, it was everything that I thought it would be. You were in position of power, so to speak, and you made decisions which were of some, you know, influence in the city. I mean, the whole thing was different. I think, for instance, I was one of the first to say, you know, why not have little tables on the footpath to have a cup of coffee like it is in Europe? Because I came from a place where this all councillors in those days, like Councillor Brown, would say, no, they can't do that, you know, it's this, it's that. Now go to Glenferrie Road now and see the difference, you know.
You were rather an innovative mayor. Can you tell me some of the interesting things that you instituted with your wife in terms of celebrations and events?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was very, and I started to turn the first one, was a community vegetable garden. I've always been involved in vegetable, being coming from a country like this, and And when we bought the strip of houses alongside Rosebery Street, which were next to the tip, which were completely, they were rotted with vermin and all sorts of things. We bought all of those, and of course it became a piece of land. And we were not going to sell those at the time because the tip was still filling up. And so I said, why not? I think the fact that we introduced a lot of things that were, I think at the time, a little bit outfield, As I say, we had this fun night at the council that we called the Sicilian night, and we had this great big chair with Cosa Nostra written on the top of it, and the councillors got involved in the humorous side and came in with violin cases and ate Italian food or Sicilian food prepared by my families, and things like that. We had the I Love My City day when we had a huge turnout of people, children in particular. And
Where was that held?
at the back of the town hall there, where there is a car park, essentially there, but we had functions going everywhere.
During his childhood, Lindsay Patterson lived with his parents and grandparents in a house in Railway Place, West Hawthorn. His mother worked at the local Hawthorn Library, which at the time was located just a few doors from the town hall in Burwood Road. Lindsay's musical interest and talent has led him to play with both the junior and the senior Hawthorn City bands. This band was formed around 1888 and has had close association with Hawthorn and the council and played at many official functions. The band has won numerous competitions, and photographs and trophies are on display in their band rooms. And the Hawthorn Town Hall, did that figure much in your psyche as a child?
I was always aware of it because, as I said, the old Hawthorn Library was directly next door to it, and I still have memories of the library, and there was a motorbolts place, and then there was the town hall. And then right from prep class, that's where the school Hawthorn West annual ball would be held there. So basically every year, from prep to year 8, I would be in the town hall there for the school dances. And I remember sawdust being on the dance floor, as is what they did at the time. So I remember at the end of each dance, because of the very slippery nature of the floor, it was just a free-for-all of running and skidding. And I became a teacher later in life. It's the sort of thing I'd be telling the kids off, don't do that. The coordinator for that was that they'd get someone in called Mrs. Miller, I think her name was, and she would have a pianist, and it was very much the Pride of Erin and a waltz, and I can't remember, the girls would do a flower dance and the boys would do a flag dance. I remember quite clearly of both going to the old Hawthorn Band Hall, both for my lessons with Vincent Fryer and with the junior band as well, was that there were some very historic old photographs on the walls, as well as a trophy cabinet as well. And one of the photos that took my imagination was of the band in 1939, and the conductor of that era was a gentleman called Alfred Paxton. So Paxton had an interest and certainly a talent of arranging music for brass bands, and one of the pictures on the wall was of the band in 1939 doing the first known full performance of Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 5. Now, even to this day, I don't think any band has ever done the full symphony. Now, as far as a milestone use of the band of the Town Hall, in the 1993, the band decided to produce a compact disc. Now, it turned out it was the first audio CD produced by an Australian community band, brass band, and that was entitled Colonial Brass, and it was also an early digital recording as well. And I remember when we were recording Colonial Brass, and also we did Australian Fantasy the next year, so we produced 2 CDs in 2 years. And I think
how long did the recording take?
Too long. I seem to remember, I think we'd started on a Friday evening, because being a part-time band, people had to work. So it was a recording weekend.
Alec Withy was senior resident hallkeeper when he and his wife Jeanette and their 2 primary school-aged children moved into an apartment in the Hawthorn Town Hall in 1985. Alec's job included important tasks which kept the building and the council offices running smoothly. But there were also many less ordinary tasks which required him to attend significant ceremonial events, meet dignitaries, assist the mayor with the mayoral robes and chain, and also be responsible, in all weather, for traversing the roof to raise and lower the flag each day.
Well, I started there in May 1985, and having worked for the City of Springvale for 10-15 years before that, I started off, and my job there was to look after the council chambers, mayoral room, meeting rooms. My staff and I then also did the town hall for functions, the supper room for functions, council meetings and all the staff meetings, that there were no meeting rooms in the staff offices, and having 200 staff working for council, there were numerous meetings for staff and public. So they had lots of meetings in the meeting rooms that were upstairs, and so that became a great part of our job, because we used to service those. The staff would want equipment and catering. Council areas, there was a cook came in when we had council meetings, and council meetings could go for 1 hour or 10 hours, like all sort of meetings do, unfortunately. Now the public would book the hall for any type of functions, weddings, sales, carpet auctions. The city danced every Saturday night, which was one of our easiest functions, fortunately. Council ran lots of functions, had citizenship ceremonies. Originally they were just up in the council chamber upstairs. When council amalgamated and they became much bigger, then they became down in the main hall. Council had mayoral balls in the hall. There was council craft market was held in the hall. Political meetings, one of the most entertaining was the launch of Pauline Hanson's One Nation. Was in Victoria, was there, and so that was, Burwood Road was blocked off, 125 police to monitor it. Town Hall was surrounded by water barriers and mounted police. Just a plain old simple political meeting, no hassles, no trouble. So our children were brought up in the town hall. I were at prep and second year of primary school when we arrived there. So they loved the town hall. They used, it was virtually their own private playground, and they had so much, they had all their birthdays there. They had their 18th and 21st birthdays there, there was a very odd, dirty room at the top of the building called the upper supper room, or the billiard room, which was pretty much a junk room with a tar floor, so it was great. So they could play in there. When they were in primary school, they would have friends and play, and parts of the area had security systems, so they knew where they couldn't go, but other parts of the buildings they could still get to because it was very wide open. So parents would turn up to collect their children, and we would have a little bit of difficulty finding them because they'd be hiding somewhere in the building. And that's it was something people just couldn't believe, you know. Well, where do you live? Oh, top of the town hall, you know. Oh, I don't believe you've got to be lying. No one could live in the top of the town hall.
So you lived in the town hall for 17 years.
Yes, it was very interesting. When Alec applied for the job and we didn't hear anything about the position, and finally he got a request for him and myself to come to the council, and they had offered him the job and took us on a tour of the accommodation, and at that time it had no maintenance done on it for some time, but so it needed painting. There was a room with an unusual window that had no glass in it, and the kitchen stove was archaic, and I said, my only comment was, I can manage anything, but can I please replace the oven because I love cooking? And they managed to find an oven and put it in, and that was great, but it had the old-fashioned butler's pantry and a separate dining room and a lounge room and a laundry, and the bathroom, and then 4 bedrooms. We were also, Alec worked very long hours, which meant we were upstairs at different times without him for information. We didn't need him in person so much, but our phone was the only after hours phone number for council that actually rang at that time. So people would look up the Hawthorn Town Hall and assume that we knew everything about Meals on Wheels, and then they'd ring at 3 in the morning to tell us that the local scout hall was burning, and we'd just say, well, have you called the fire brigade? Also, being the town hall after hours phone number, people like the Premier would perhaps ring, or his office would ring and say, the Premier's running late for a function. Now, I'd be upstairs in my home in my less than wonderful clothes, and I would have to run downstairs to the function where everybody is dressed to the nines, trying to attract the attention of the Greek Consul General to let him know the Premier was going to be late for the function. So it was always interesting, and living there, you always felt walking up that magnificent staircase, if you're in your runners and tracksuit pants or whatever, you just felt slightly underdressed. And originally, when there was just the big mirror there, you'd walk up there and see yourself in your glory.